Chapter 44, she cried. When Stella got back home, she ran immediately to her mother, her eyes meeting her father's. She shook her head, and he bowed his. They'd known it would be a long shot. Neither of them had really expected Dr. Packard to come. But Mrs. Winston had come. She called to Stella to get some victuals. "You must be starvin', girl." Hot soup and warm biscuits appeared on the table. Stella hadn't realized how hungry she was. She ate it all. "Thank you, Mrs. Winston," she said gratefully. "Thank you." Mrs. Hawkins began wiping Mamma's brow with cold compresses. "I bought a pot of the same kind of elderberry willow tea your Mamma's fixed for my Tony," she said. We've been getting her to sip a little bits." "Is it helping?" Stella asked. "Well, her fever ain't spiking, and the swelling hasn't gotten any worse, so that's a good sign," Mrs. Hawkins replied. But Stella could read the fear on her face. Stella squatted at Jojo at the fire, where he was rolling 2 marbles between his palms, and pulled him close. Jojo rolled the marbles faster and faster and faster and faster. Finally, he whispered, "Is Mama gonna die, Stella?" "I don't really know for sure," Stella told him. "It looks pretty bad right now. But Mama is the strongest woman in Bumblebee, maybe in all of North Carolina." "Uh-huh," Jojo replied, but he didn't sound convinced. Papa knelt down beside them. "I'm going to be honest with you two. If it was a rattler that bit her, that venom can be fatal. Sometimes it depends on the type of rattlesnake, where the bite is, and the type of toxin it carries. We really don't know what bit your Mama, but if I had been the most serious type, she'd already been gone." Stella held Jojo tighter. But a person can survive a copperhead bite if that's what got her. It ain't pretty, but it is possible. Anti-venom sure would make it a lot less painful and a lot more certain. Dr. Packard could help with that, but he didn't. So we're going to depend on our friends to keep her comfortable and our God to pull her through. Understood? They both nodded. "Now say your prayers and get some sleep. We have some long days ahead." Stella grabbed a quilt, covered herself and Jojo on his bed by the hearth, and began to pray. She prayed and prayed, listening to the embers crumble, certain she would never be able to sleep this entire night. So she was confused and disoriented when the front door burst open and several people entered, all seemingly talking at once. Mrs. Odom, who usually dressed in demure long dresses and straw hats, had on a pair of men's overalls and an old plain work shirt. Her hair was unstyled and all over her head. Stella could tell she'd left home in a real hurry. Her daughter Claudia, looking sleepy, wore a nightgown, and Dr. Hawkins, in his Sunday go-to meeting, 3-piece suit and fedora, filled the room with his authority. Claudia spotted Stella. "Can I lie down with you and Jojo, Stella?" she asked, coming over. "We've been in the car all night." Stella hopped up, patted the place where she'd been sleeping, and tucked Claudia in. Claudia was out before Stella had even had the blanket fully around her. Then Stella ran over to the adults. Her father was in the midst of giving Mrs. Odom a bear hug. He pulled Stella into it. "Stella, girl, praise the Lord. Mrs. Odom here heard about the snake bite, got in her car, and drove all the way to Raleigh to get Dr. Hawkins from his medical conference," Papa told her, mashing them both. Mrs. Odom extracted herself from the embrace, but her cheeks were flushed with pride. Stella felt she was going to burst. Mrs. Odom? She drove? The woman who wouldn't ever take the car out of fear of getting dust on it? Praise the Lord indeed. "And there's even better news," Papa added, hope in his voice. "Doc Hawkins has some anti-venom at his office. He's given Mama her first dose right now." So Mama's not going to, I mean, she's gonna live? Stella asked incredulously. Nothing's for sure yet, her father replied, but at least she has a fighting chance now. And you know what else, Stella? What? Stella couldn't imagine anything more. Dr. Hawkins says that what you did out there in the woods was simply amazing. Cleaning and treating the treatment of the snake bite the way you did probably saved her life, kept her alive long enough for him to get here. Stella felt relief flood through her, and for the first time since she'd found her mother, she cried.